Pialino Wampoyowan, Kenihki Nitstoke, Naman Timomachtice, Tlen Ika, Kenihki Motlalia, Se Atlatocastilistli, Ihitik, Se Tlachihualistli. Hi everyone, today we're going to be learning about how you insert a noun into a verb. Oh, and also how you add two nouns with each other. So how do you combine nouns with nouns and how you combine nouns with verbs. Okay. Let me share my screen. Let me know if you don't see the screen or if you have any technical issues. You don't see my slides changing, which I'm about to change the slides. So you should see this. All right. So the class is called Nahuatl Compound Nouns and Noun Incorporation. I know that sounds crazy, and this is just like the grammatical way to say it. But all it means is that you're going to add two nouns with each other. There's specific rules for general nouns, and then there's specific rules for the nouns that end in ket, which we've learned before, the agents. And then you can also combine noun with verbs. In my mind, this is what makes Nahuatl really fun, and it's also what makes Nahuatl have really long words, because as you will see in this class, you can add two nouns, or you could add three nouns together, or you can make the nouns as long as you want, which is one of the reasons why sometimes you see really long words in Nahuatl. Okay? So let's start with the first word. The first word is Tlahtoli. So you've probably already seen this word Tlahtoli in the word Nahuatl, right? For Nahuatl, the language. But this word Tlahtoli, it means many, many things. It can mean word, it can mean speech, it can mean language, it can mean a phrase, it can mean a conversation. The real root of this word Tlahtoli is the verb ihtoa, which means to say things, and Tlahtoli literally means something that is said. That is the literal meaning of the word Tlahtoli, but that word Tlahtoli can have all these other meanings, okay? So now let me give you some examples of words that you might have seen with the word Tlahtoli. So first word obviously is Nahuatl, which is the language that you're learning, okay? Nahuatl. Then we have Tlahtoli. Some of you might speak Tlahtoli. And if you're watching this video, you probably speak Inglés Tlahtoli. Okay? So notice in this context, the word Tlahtoli, it means language. So when we speak Nahuatl, we speak Tlahtoli, the Nahuatl language. This is one way to say it. There are actually multiple ways to say the language Nahuatl. In Nahuatl, you could say it Nahuatl, you could call it Nahuatl, you could call it Mexica Tlahtoli, which is the language of the Mexica Tlahtoli. You could also call it Masewalcopa. Masewalcopa means in the manner of the people. Or you could call it Tlahtoli. Now, Tlahtoli is more like saying like native language or indigenous language, because Masewali means indigenous person. But some people might say, oh, to Tlahtol are indigenous language. So that's one of the ways to call it. But most of the time you'll hear it as Nahuatl or Nahuatl. Quali. So as you saw, we combined the word Nahuatl and with the word Tlahtoli to make it one word, Nahuatl. Then you probably didn't pay attention in all my intros, but in some of my intros, I said the word Tlahtol Tecpanalistli. So you might be surprised that Nahuatl does have a word for grammar. And that word for grammar is Tlahtol Tecpanalistli. So that's literally taking two words, the word Tlahtoli for word and Tecpanalistli means like organizing something. So Tlahtol Tecpanalistli is like organizing words, or you could even think about it as like organizing the language, because like I said, Tlahtoli can also mean language. So Tlahtol Tecpanalistli could mean like the organization or organizing of the language, which is why it means grammar. So this is how you say the word grammar in Nahuatl. It's pretty long. It's Tlahtol Tecpanalistli, and it's a compound noun, a word made out of two nouns. So if you wanted to make this even bigger in Nahuatl, you can make even bigger expressions. So we had the word Tlahtol Tecpanalistli to mean grammar, right? But if you want to specifically talk about Nahuatl grammar as one thing, in Nahuatl, you can combine these words together to make it the whole word Nahuatlahtol from the word Nahuatlahtoli. So Nahuatl language, and Tecpanalistli. So if you combine these three words together as Nahuatl Tecpanalistli, it literally means Nahuatl grammar. In English, we tend to separate them as separate words, but Nahuatl likes to combine nouns in this way to make them into bigger words, which is why this word Nahuatl Tecpanalistli is really long, but it's because there's three words in there. That's why it seems so long, but it's really just three words stuck together. So be Nahuatl Tecpanalistli, Nahuatl language organizing, aka Nahuatl grammar. So as you can see in Nahuatl, you can combine two nouns with each other, or you can combine three nouns, or as many as you want, depending on what idea you want to express. And so a lot of people always say, oh, Nahuatl must be a simple language because indigenous people speak it and blah, blah, blah. Oh, you probably can't come up with complex ideas. Well, Nahuatl does have this ability to create complex ideas, and it does it by creating compound nouns. So you can create almost any idea by joining nouns like this in Nahuatl. So it is not deficient as a language, and you can express almost anything. And by the way, Nahuatl has poetry. So you can create poetry without having complex language. Okay, so compound noun changes. So if you noticed, there is a pattern on how you create these compound nouns. And so here I'm going to tell you what the pattern is. It's very similar to all the patterns you've already seen in the past. So you're going to have a noun with all those four endings, like the word coscat, necklace, wearing one, Tlahtoli, word, amoshli, book, and michin, fish. So if you notice, these are all regular nouns in Nahuatl. They all have that absolutive ending, the TL, the LI, the TLI, and the IN. This is the absolutive ending that you've heard over and over and over again. Well, you're going to remove that when you're going to combine one noun with another noun. So you're going to remove that last part, and then you're going to add the second noun at the end and keep the second noun like it is. So for example, if we're going to say coscat and calli, you can combine those by removing the TL from coscat and then having it as coscacali. Okay, for Tlahtoli, it would become Tlahtolcali, amoshli, amoshcali, and michin, michcali. So this word cali, it means house, but it also has this other meaning of building, okay? Like a building, a physical building. There are other words like I've told you in the past that don't have those absolutive endings. In those cases, you just add cali to the end. So if you wanted to say chichicali, like a dog house, you would say chichicali. And if you want to say caballo cali, like a stable, maybe a horse's building, a building for a horse, you could call it a caballo cali. All right, so you probably saw the expression Tlahtolcali and you were like, what the hell does that even mean, right? Why did you add cali to all these words? Well, Tlahtolcali, it really, Nahuatl is very flexible in the sense that you could combine two nouns, and the meaning that you decide that it sometimes is very literal and sometimes it's metaphorical. So here, maybe you're thinking Tlahtoli, language, and calli. So this could be like a building house, like a language building. Let's say you're at a school, that school has a language department, and you are talking about, you want to talk about the language building that's over there, you could call it the Tlahtolcali. Okay, so Nahuatl has that flexibility to create new ideas and new terms. So a Tlahtolcali could be like a language section of a university, etc., or maybe a language school or something like that. Although there is a word for school in Nahuatl as well. Okay, so these are all the definitions of maybe what these words could mean. So for example, coscacali could be like a necklace building. Like maybe I found my necklace there at the coscacali. Tlahtolcali could be like a language building. Amoshcali this is actually a word that is actually used in Nahuatl, and it literally means book building, right? Amoshli and Cali, book building. But this is one of the ways that they say library in Nahuatl. So this is another way to say library, Amoshkali. Now, I think there's other ones, but this is a very common word, Amoshkali. Michkali, let's say you had an aquatic center or somewhere where you saw all kinds of different types of fishes, etc. You could call that potentially a Michkali. So you see, all right. so as you can tell, the first noun that you're going to combine with the second noun, you're going to drop the absolutive, and then you're going to add the second noun, and the second noun, you're not going to change it at all. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you, Kenihki moilia ikanawat, how do you say in Nahuatl? Okay, so before we do this exercise, I'm going to give you like 1 or 2 minutes to look at these words. You probably already know these words and with their definitions. And then I'm going to ask you, how do you say X thing? So we have the word tototl, huicatl, tetl, citlalin, and miston. Now I put the TLI in parentheses because this word miston, it means like a cat, like a house cat. But that's how they say miston in Nahuatl. But this word miston, it comes from an older Nahuatl word, which is the word mistontli. So really the word is actually mistontli, but with time it has been shortened to miston. But mistontli literally means little cat, because this is coming from the root word mistli. Mistli means like lion, puma, jaguar, like a big cat, like a big cat basically. So mistontli, like a house cat, is generally much smaller. So that's why a mistontli is a little cat, like a house cat. Whereas, that mistontli with time got shortened into miston. But so it really does have an absolutive here. So, but the reason I put it there is that so you know how to join it with other nouns in the future. But this is just like an anomaly, I would say. Okay. So, kenihkimo ilia ikanawat, so you can unmute yourself. Kenihkimo ilia, birdhouse. How would you say a birdhouse? Ikanawat. Kenihkimo ilia.
Moilia totokali.
Kena, totokali. Kuali. Kenihkimo ilia, song building.
Moilia wikat kali.
Okay, so what should you do with that TL?
And you drop it.
Okay, so would it
So
be
wika.
kali?
Wika kali.
Kali. So some people out there might ask me, hey, isn't song quicat with a C? And the answer to that is yes. The word in Central Nahuatl for song is quicat with a C, but for some reason in the Huasteca region, they lost the C and they just say huicat. But quicat or huicat are basically the same thing. And so you could have said cuicacali with a C, cuicacali or huicacali. I'm just giving you the Huasteca version of this word. Huicacali or cuicacali. Cuale. Kenihkimoilia ikanawat, stone house. A house made out of stone.
Tekali?
Sampa? Again?
Tekali?
Tecali. Cuali. So it would be tecali. So notice the word for stone is tet. We take away the TL and it becomes tecali. Cuali. All right, so maybe you want to say star house. And then you're like, what the hell is a star house? Maybe star observatory. How would you say something like that? How do you think you could say that?
Moilia sitlalkali.
Citlalcali. So that word citlalin is in, right? So you take away the in, it becomes citlal and citlalcali. Now this is a constructed word, and I'm not sure 100% if you were to say this in modern Nahuatl, if they would be like, oh, what do you mean star house? They would probably ask you what that means. But this is just to illustrate how you combine nouns in Nahuatl, and in theory, you could probably use this for like star observatory. Now, we know that they don't currently, the Nahuatl people don't have currently Nahuatl star observatories, but maybe one day they could. All right, and you could use this word. Okay, cat house.
Mitsonkali?
Mistontli. ¿Cuál? Mistontli, cat house. Okay, so I want to point out one thing that is very important, and I do see some people breaking this rule sometimes, and I'm not sure if it's because they don't know or they're not really paying attention. But the order in which you combine the nouns, it really does matter. Okay, so in the previous question, I asked you, how do you say cat house? So you say mistontli, right? Cat house, mistontli. That's cool, no problem. But what if you were like, hey, what if I said cal miston? What if instead I took the calli and I put it in the front and I put the miston at the end? What does cal miston, or I guess cal mistontli? What would that mean? Well, that would mean something different. It would mean like house cat. So the order in which you combine the nouns, it does matter. Now, some people would break this rule, but generally you shouldn't, because it does change the meaning. But I do sometimes see people break this rule. Like, for example, well, this would be like an example. If you're trying to say cat house, but you actually say cal miston, or you're saying house cat, well, you need to pay attention to what you're actually trying to emphasize. So when you're talking about a cat house, your real emphasis is the house, not really the cat. The house is the noun that is the main focus of what you're talking about. And the cat modifies it and tells you what kind of a house it is. So it's a house, but it's a cat house, a type of house that is a cat house. For cats, it's, for example, versus if you want to say house cat, your main focus is the cat. And you want to say, oh, what kind of cat is it? A cat that belongs in a house. So they would be calmiston that way. If you have trouble getting the order correctly, it's basically the same as in English. So if you follow the same order as English, like cat house, house cat, it's the same. You might have trouble if you speak Spanish because they are reversed. But if you speak English, pretty much just follow the rule, the order in English, and you'll pretty much get the Nahuatl equivalent of the word. The reason I say that is because, like, for example, I may or may not have seen people say like, well, I don't want to burn people out. So let me give you a different example. Like if you want to say firewoman, you would say tli siwatl. Tlit is fire and siwatl is woman. So your focus is the woman, tli siwat, firewoman. But I have seen somebody do something like this, siwatlit. Siwatlit would not make any sense because you're saying woman fire, which it doesn't make sense in Nahuatl. So you need to really think about it. But if you have trouble thinking about what order it should be, just follow the order that you would say it in English, and it pretty much matches in Nahuatl. Okay? Quali. So another example that you may or may not have seen this word before, but a lot of you may or may not know that the Day of the Dead was actually a celebration that the Aztecs had, but they didn't have it for just a day. They had it for almost a month. Whatever, I think like 20 days was a month on the Aztec calendar, the Mexica calendar. So for them, they celebrated it for a month, but now we celebrate it as like 1 day or 2 days, however it is in Mexico. But anyways, that's besides the point. What I'm trying to say is that the word for Day of the Dead in Nahuatl is Mihka Ilhuitl. Mihka Ilhuitl, okay? This word Mihka, it means dead person, and Mihka doesn't mean dead person, but I'm going to tell you how this breaks down. And then we have the word Ilhuitl. Now, Ilhuitl in Nahuatl, it has two meanings. One meaning is the word for day, but it more has the meaning of like a celebration, like a festival. So Mihka Ilhuitl is more like a celebration or a festival for the dead. So it isn't specifically 1 day. Now, like you'll see like, oh, like a festival, they might call it, or a party, they might call it an Ilhuitl. That's one way to say it, but that they're just more saying like, this is a festival, this is like a celebration. Okay, so this word Mihka Ilhuitl, it really isn't from the word Mihka. That doesn't mean dead person. It's really coming from the word Mihket, Micquetl. And something that you may notice about this word Mihket is that it ends in Quetl. So if you notice, when you combine this Mihket with another noun, there is a slightly different procedure that you need to follow. Okay, so for example, you may have remembered our previous classes. We had learned the word temachtiket, which is what I am. Ni temachtiket, I'm a teacher. And you remember that when you possess it and you want to say my teacher, you don't say no temachtiket. That is not the correct way to say it. That ket turns into a ka. So it becomes no temachtika, my teacher, no temachtika. So really this ket becomes ka. Okay, so in the same way that ket becomes a ka when you possess it, anytime that those ket nouns, those nouns that end in ket, when they combine with other nouns, they become, that ket becomes a ka, a ca. Okay, so if you wanted to say teacher's book, you would not say temachti amoshli, you would say temachtika amoshli. Kind of like in the past when I was saying temachtikatsin, to say a teacher in a nice way, you would say temachtikatsin, you were adding the ka. Well, when you add this amoshli or any other noun, these ket nouns become ka. So it becomes temachtika amoshli. That's how you would say teacher's book. Or if you want to say teacher's building, you would say temachtika calli. Temachtika amoshli and temachtika calli. Quali. All right, so you need to add this ka. So this ket becomes ka. All right, so keniki moilia, time for you to participate, hopefully, if you want to. So what I'm going to give you is these three words on the left: momachtiket, mistotiket, tlahuiloket. These words were previous vocabulary words that were part of that agent lecture. So momachtiket, student; mistotiket, dancer; tlahuiloket, writer. And then we have on the right, we're going to combine it with the word amoshli, nemilistli, life, and calli, building. All right, so this is how you say nemilistli. It literally means like the act of going, or going from place to place, or things going, basically, is what nemilistli means, literally. Okay, or living, something like that, living. Okay, student's book, kenihki moilia ika Nahuatl.
Moelia momachtika amoshli.
Quali. Momachtika amoshli. Okay, quali. So good job on converting the ket into a ka. Another way you could actually say this would be, and this is something that you learned in the past, you could also say iamosh momachtiket. Okay? So the difference in the meaning here is that momachtika amoshli is like you putting it as like one word, as like the idea of a student's book, like a manual, let's say a student manual or something, student momachtika amoshli. Versus when you say iamosh momachtiket, you're specifically talking about a specific student and his book, like his or her book. So you're saying iamosh momachtiket, you're saying it's his book or it's her book, or that specific student's book, right? Like that student that you're talking about. Whereas on the top, momachtika mostly is talking about a student's book in general. Okay, so be able to distinguish that. I wanted to make that point. Quali. Student's building.
Moelia momachtika kali.
Kena. Momachtika kali. So we have momachtiket. The ka becomes the ket becomes ka, and then we are kali. So momachtika kali. And if you want to specifically talk about like the building that this very specific student who you're talking about, it would be ikal momachtiket. I'm just giving you this in case you were gonna ask me like, hey, but what if I want to say his building of the student? This is how you would say it, and this is a previous lesson. So I'm just putting all these answers in there, but I actually want you to focus on this answer, the momachtika kali. Quali, student's life.
Moelia momachtika nemilistli.
Quali, momachtika nemilistli. Momachtika nemilistli, student's life. The life of a student. Momachtika nemilistli. Quali. And this would be inemilis momachtiket, the life of a specific student or his life. This is like say his, her life. Inemilis momachtiket. Quali. Dancer's life. Like this is the dancer life. We need to create songs. Okay. I'll stop. How would you say keniki moilia? Dancer's life, the life of a dancer. Let's say you were to make a documentary called Dancer's Life. This is what you could title it.
Moelia mistotika nemilistli.
Quali? Mistotika nemilistli. Mistotika nemilistli. Or inemilis mistotiket. This is like the life of a dancer. The life of a dancer. Quali? Writer's book.
Moelia tlacuiloca mostly.
Tlahuilohka mostly. Now notice that there's two A's right here. I'm thinking very likely a native speaker would just say it as, they would combine those two A's and just say Tlahuilohka mostly. Tlahuilohka mostly. They probably wouldn't elongate it, but I just put it there to be consistent. But probably they would just say Tlahuilohka mostly. Writer's book, or Iamos Tlahuilohket, the book of the writer, the book of the writer. Quali. But what if you want to say book writer? So you're gonna have to flip it, right? Now it's not the writer's book, but now it's a book writer, a person who writes books.
Moelia amos tlacuiloquetl.
Quali. Amos Tlahuilohket. Amos Tlahuilohket. So we took the word amoshli, and then we added the whole, so this is the book, and then Tlahuilohket, writer. So book, writer, Amos Tlahuilohket. Keniki moilia, Nahuatl, writer. A person who writes in the Nahuatl language.
Moelia nawa tlacuiloquetl.
Nahuatl Tlahuilohket. Quali. Quali. Keniki moilia, Nahuatl student, which is what you are. Ti. Ta. Nahuatl student.
Moelia nawa momachtiquetl.
Nawa momachtiket. Quali. Okay. And how would you turn this Nawa momachtiket into more than one Nawa momachtiket? So you would say Nahuatl students. How would you make this Nawa momachtiket be more than one? This is
Moelia
Mhm.
Moelia nawa momachtican.
Amo.
Oh, nawa momachtica Juan.
That's when you possess it.
God damn it.
Non-Nahuatl students, I would say no Nawa momachtikawan. That would be my Nahuatl students. That's when you possess it. But if you want to just make it plural, you change momachtia to momachtiani. So
That was the next one in line.
so se momachtiket, ome momachtiani, eye momachtiani, nawi momachtiani, etc., etc. So this would be nawa momachtiani. So when I say y'all are Nahuatl students, I would say in nawa momachtiani. That whole phrase in nawa momachtiani would be y'all are Nahuatl students, and that's one whole sentence in Nahuatl, or one whole word in Nahuatl, which is one in nawa momachtiani. You want to say we are Nahuatl students, ti nawa momachtiani, and it's one whole sentence in Nahuatl, one whole word in Nahuatl, but it's a sentence. It's equivalent to a sentence in English. Okay. Nahuatl writers. So you're gonna first think about one Nahuatl writer, and then how would you turn that into more than one Nahuatl writer?
Nawa tlacuiloani.
Kena. Nahuatl tlahuiloani. So the word tlahuiloa is to write. You just add the ni to the verb, and it becomes tlahuiloani. But if you had one, it would be Nahuatl tlahuilohket. Now, this is referencing the previous lesson where I told you how to create agents, and those agents are only class 3 verbs. We haven't covered how to do it for other class verbs, but basically this tlahuiloa is a class 3 verb. ¿Cuál? Kenihki Moilia, Spanish writers.
Moilia español Tlahtoli Tlacuilo Ani.
Uh-huh. So actually, they use the word Castilan.
Oh, Castillo.
Uh-huh. So this word exists since the 1500s when the Spanish arrived, because they came from Castilla, which, if you remember, Español, as we call it Español, they actually call it Castellano, because in Spain there's multiple types of Spanish, and they were competing with each other in the 1400s, like Aragonés, Gallego, and there, if you go and listen to them, you can even find them on YouTube, and you'll find that they sound very similar to Spanish. I mean, Castilian Spanish, Castellano, but they're not. Some Galician sounds like between like a hybrid between Spanish and Portuguese. And if you listen to like Aragonés, and even right now the people in Catalan, they're fighting for the autonomy of their language. Well, when you listen to Catalan, it is not exactly Castellano Spanish. It is like a slightly different variety that sounds like Spanish, of Castilian Spanish, but isn't. And because the people who came from Spain came from Castile, or they spoke Castilian Spanish, they call them Castilteca. Castilteca means person from Castile. So the language, they call it Castilan. From the Castilan would be like the place of Castile. It got Nahuatlized. Nahuatlized. It became like, so from Castilla, it became Castilan. I mean, the place of Castile, and then Castilan Castilan is how you say Spanish in Nahuatl. So Castilan Tlacuiloani would be Spanish writers. That's just because of the history of it. So when you hear Castilan Tlahtoli, that means Spanish language. Castilan Tlahtoli, Castilan Tlacuiloani, Spanish writers. Okay. Okay. Maybe this one you may not remember, but do you know how to say poetry in Nahuatl? I've given to you this word multiple times in this class. Maybe you remember it, maybe you don't. But if you don't worry, I'll give it to you. But I'm going to build on this idea. So Keniki Moilia, if you remember, poetry y Nahuatl.
Moilia Xochitlatoli.
Kena, Xochitlahtoli. So literally in Nahuatl, poetry is flowery words. Okay? Xochitlahtoli, from the word xochitl, flower, and tlahtoli, words or language or speech, as I told you, right? So xochitlahtoli could be translated as like flowery words, flowery language, flowery speech, flowery conversation, etc. That's how they say poetry in Nahuatl. ¿Cuál? Ooh, I put the answer in there. Okay, well, that sucks. How would you say poetry writer? Ika Nahuatl. Well, I gave you one answer. But there's actually another one that's missing there. I should have not. Anyways. So, okay. So the word in Nahuatl for poetry is xochitlahtol, right? Xochitlahtoli. So you can take that word xochitlahtoli, take away the li, and then add the word tlacuiloquetl to it, right? Xochitlahtol tlacuiloquetl. It literally means poetry writer. Xochitlahtol tlacuiloquetl. But this word for poetry already does exist, and you could also just say xochitlacuiloquetl, because this xochitlacuiloquetl has that meaning of like flowery writer. So it still would be understood as poet or poetry writer. But this xochitlahtol, this is showing you how you can combine xochitl, tlahtoli, and tlacuiloquetl. And if you remember this word tlacuiloquetl, if you know enough now, you'll know that this word tlacuiloquetl also has individual parts in it. So you can see how now it just creates these big words from little ideas, and then you have like a bigger meaning. This is how Nahuatl operates. That's why it's an agglutinating language, and that's when we see these words that are like gigantic, and they look crazy to us when we're learning it. But once you break it down, it's not so crazy after all. You know the parts xochi, tlahtoli, and tlacuiloquetl, then you'll be fine. And that word xochi, tlahtol, tlacuiloquetl doesn't sound so difficult once you know the parts. Quali. All right, so now I'm going to give you more examples or actually, let me give you some examples. Okay, not of big words, but of other ways that you can combine words in Nahuatl. Okay, so here we have the word for alashos. Okay, inin se alashos. Alashos. Some varieties call these lalash, but in our variety we say alashos. ¿Cuál? All right. Inin tlacat kinamaka alashos. Okay, I'm not sure that they're oranges, but we're gonna pretend that they are. Okay. Inin tlacat kinamaka alashos. Or I could also say tlacat alashos namaka. So over here I had kinamaka alashos, and over here I have tlacat alashos namaka. ¿Cuál? All right. Another example, I have the word xochitl. Xochitl. Inin se xochitl. But inin sihuatl, kinamaka xochitl. Inin sihuatl, kinamaka xochitl. Or sihuatl xochinamaka. Sihuatl xochinamaka. ¿Cuál? So these were two examples of how Nahuatl can combine one noun with the verb. So in the previous example, we had the word xochi and namaka. Namaka means to sell something, to sell a thing. So if you notice, when we were using namaka right here, we were adding this word ki, because if you remember from previous lessons, a transitive verb requires you to say that you're doing the action to another object. So we have here, siwat kinamaka xochitl, you're literally saying siwat, it sells the flower. Or see the woman, it sells the flower, is how Nahuatl says it. Okay, but any of those transitive verbs, when anytime that you see that space where you can have an object there, well, you can insert the nik, the k, the mech, the nech, the meets, the tla, the te, all of those prefixes, the mo, you can put them in there, but you could also put any noun in there. So here we have the noun xochi, flower, inserted into the verb namaka to mean sells flowers. Okay, so you're gonna do the same thing as when you combine two nouns together. You're gonna take the noun at the beginning, the xochi, and you're gonna remove the absolutive, which is that TL. You're gonna remove it, and then you're gonna add it to the verb. Okay, you can only add this to transitive verbs, verbs that take an object, like I said. Okay, but so yeah, so this must be a transitive verb. But what I want to say is that this meaning, when you insert the noun into the verb, it doesn't just mean the woman sells flowers, like she sells a specific flower or flowers. When you say shochi namaka, you're saying that she does this on a habitual basis. Okay, like this is something regular that she does. So you saw that picture of that woman, that's her job, that's what she does. So you would say siwat shochinamaka because she normally regularly does something like that. So this is what is a slightly different meaning. If you say siwat kinamaka shochit, it can mean multiple things. It can mean the woman sells flowers, like she's doing that right now. Or it can mean that she sells them on a regular basis, like as to the question, like, what does she do? What is she doing now? It would be like, she sells flowers. Siwat kinamaka xochit. But if you say siwat xochinamaka, you're literally saying she does this more like on a regular basis. This is something that she commonly does. So this xochinamaka has that habitual meaning. Something you do on the regular. Okay? Quali. So kenihki moilia, how do you say? Okay, so I'm going to give you these words on the left. Amoshli, wikat, calli, you already saw a lot of these. Tecatli, shoe. Tlahtoli, food. And we have these verbs, chiwa, to make something or to do something. Notice I have that little space to tell you that this verb is a transitive verb. So chiwa, to make something, and kowa, to buy something. Okay? So keniki moilia ikanawat, she makes shoes. So let me go back to the words in case you don't know. Okay, so we have here shoe and we have to make. So keniki moilia ikanawat, She makes shoes. So you have two options here.
Moilia tecacchiwa.
Kena. Tecacchiwa is one way. This tecacchiwa would be like that's something that she regularly does. She makes shoes. Tecacchiwa. And but you could also say kichiwa tecactli. This is something you learned in the past, and this is more like saying like this is what she's doing right now. Like ella hace zapatos, and you're saying that she does it now. Whereas tecacchiwa, she makes shoes. It's more like she does it on a regular basis. Like this is something she does maybe for her job or whatever. Keniki moilia y Nahuatl, I make shoes.
Moilia nikchiwa tecactli.
That's one way, nikchiwa tecactli. But what if you do this on a regular basis?
Moilia tecacchiwa.
But if you want to say, that's he or she does makes shoes. But what if you want to say, I do this on the regular?
Would it be tecacnichiwa? No.
Okay, so you could put the ni in front of any of these. Okay.
Okay,
So
got
it
it.
becomes ni tecacchiwa. So let's say they were asked you, tlenti tequiti, what do you work doing? Or tlenti chiwa ipan moteki, what do you do at your job? You could just say ni tecacchiwa. I make shoes. Ni tecacchiwa. Like this is something that I do on a regular basis. Like for example, my job is to sell medications. I'm a pharmacist. So I could say ni pahnamaka. Ni pahnamaka is I sell medicines. Ni pahnamaka. Pahtli is medicine and namaka, you learn, means to sell. So ni pahnamaka implies like I do this on a regular basis. I sell medicine. Ni pahnamaka. Okay, quali. Y'all make shoes. So there's two options. One is when you're doing it right now, or one is when you do it on a regular basis.
Moilia inchiwa tecactli.
Okay, you forgot, yes, but you forgot one part, which is the object right here.
Oh.
So in chiwa means y'all make it, but because this verb chiwa is a transitive verb, it requires you to indicate what the object is. So now it literally says this: y'all it make shoes. Y'all it make shoes. That's what Nahuatl says, but this is required all the time. Nahuatl requires you to always put the object there. So it would be in kichiwa. In kichiwa. If you say in chiwa, that's grammatically incorrect. They might understand you, but they'll know he made a mistake right there. So they would say in kichiwa tecactli. Y'all make shoes. That's like what you're doing right now. But if you want to say y'all make shoes on a regular basis.
So would that be in ki tecacchiwa?
Okay, so in tecacchiwa. Okay, so this tecactli, it takes the place of the object. So this ki is indicating what the object is. And in this case, because we don't have the object here, we're indicating as in it. Like we it make shoes, or we it make shoe, whatever, you know. But once you put the tecactli is taking the place of the object. So now this is the object tecac. So in tecacchiwa is how you would say it. Notice there's an H here because we're plural. Ooh, I forgot an H right here. This should be in kichiwa with an H, tecactli, and this is in tecacchiwa with an H to symbolize the plural. Quali. You make songs.
Moilia tikchiwa wicatl.
Tikchiwa wicat. Quali. And if you do this on a regular basis.
Moilia tiwika chiwa.
Tiena. Tiwikachiwa. You make songs, like maybe you're a songwriter. I mean, you could also probably use writer instead of chiwa in this case, but I kept it simple because of the previous examples. But you could change this to you write songs, and that would be tikihquiloa wikat. You write songs, tikihquiloa wikat, or tiwika ihquiloa, tiwika ihquiloa. You write songs on a regular basis. Okay, keniki moilia, we make songs.
Moilia tikchiwa wikat.
Tikchiwa wikat, and if we do this on a regular basis,
Moilia tiwika chiwa.
tiwika chiwa. Quali. I buy books. One if I'm doing that right now, and one if I do this on a regular basis.
Moilia nikowa amoshli.
Nikowa amoshli. Quali.
So amosh. Hold on. Amosh. Sorry, it's coming to me right now. I need a lifeline.
Remember,
blank.
amoshli, this k represents the object. So amoshli can be inserted right here where the object is.
Cuartito. Okay, so it's ni amosh goa.
Ni amoshkowa. I buy books on a regular basis. Maybe you're a book buyer. I buy books. He buys books.
Moilia kichiwa amoshli.
Kichiwa is make.
Oh, sorry. Kichowa amoshli.
Kowa.
Kowa. Kikowa amoshli.
Uh-huh. And if
So
you do it
then-
on a regular basis,
Amoshkowa.
amoshkowa. Quali. They buy books. I don't remember if I got more complex on this question, but I probably did. We'll see.
They buy books. Tohuantin tikchiwach amoshli.
Tohuantin is us.
Oh,
Chiwa
sorry.
make, and amoshli, oh, that was, so you said we make books.
Sorry. So the Goa. Maybe tikowa amoshli.
No, but
Kowa.
tihkoa means we do it. Tihkoa,
Oh, I'm sorry. In kikowa amoshli.
in kikoa is y'all buy books.
There's one more then. So
For
then
they,
it's
there is
kikowa.
nothing there. There is nothing.
Kikowa.
Kihkoa, amoshli. For they, it's nothing. You don't put anything here. And then amoshkoa. The only difference between this one and the previous one is this H, amoshkoa. Quali? I make food. I cook. I make food.
Moilia nikchiwa tlakuali.
Okay, that is one way. Nikchiwa tlakuali. Or
So ni tlakua chiwa.
ni tlacualchiwa. And actually, if you go look up this verb tlacualchiwa is in the dictionary, and it means to cook food. So the word for to cook food would be tlacualchiwa. That's how you say it in Nahuatl. Now that is one way. There's another way. I think it's ixi. I think there's another one. I think it's ixi. I have to double check. But for sure, ni tlacualchiwa means to cook food. And now you see how it's constructed. Quali. All right. Oh, that was my last question. Not too bad. Okay. I thought I had more than that. I thought I got crazy. You know how sometimes I get crazy? Oh, I didn't change this big and small part. And that means I don't know what I'm teaching next week. F. I didn't think about it. Okay. Well, I will be teaching you something next week. I just don't know what it's gonna be. Oh, I know what I want to do. I want to do adjectives like very, much, a lot. That's what I want to do. So this big and small is kind of there. But anyways, it's not gonna be big and small. I messed up and didn't change it by accident. But anyways, in Nahuatl, you can combine two nouns to make bigger expressions. So Nahuatl can allow you to create new expressions by just combining two nouns together. You don't know this yet, but you could also combine adjectives and nouns. And then you could also combine nouns with verbs, as I showed you in this class. Most nouns act normally, you just remove the absolutive ending and then add the second noun. But these nouns that end in ket, they act a little bit differently. When you connect them to something else, they generally use this connector ka. When you possess it, it's ka-u-h. But when adding it to other suffixes, it just becomes ka. So no temachtika, my teacher, but temachtikatsin, venerated or reverential teacher. These, I left these. I shouldn't have left these, but when you add the ska with any of these, when you add a ket with any of these, you're gonna add the ka connector. And also when you add ka to any other noun or verb, I didn't give you an example of a verb, but if you were to add like a temachtiket inside of another verb, and I can't think of an example, generally it will be added with a ka. So I can't think of, no, not selling. You can't sell teachers. I can't think of an example of where you use a person as an object. That's why I can't think of an example. But trust me, I've seen it like nenengkatlakat. Oh no, that's two nouns together. It exists. I can't think of a good example. All right, tlasokamati miak imohuantin tlen nechita inochime tlen nechpalewia tlasokamati miak nel niyolpaktok tlasokamati pampa techmakahke miak tomin wan tlawen niyolpaktok. Thank you everybody who has donated. Thank you everybody who has helped me, who has paid me. Y'all have given me a lot of money. Thank you. This keeps me motivated and keeps me making these classes. And I'm very happy about that. Tlastokamatimiak, Tlatlanilistli. I leave it up for you for questions. I hope that this class was easy. This is actually one of my most favorite topics. I love Noun Incorporation. I think that's what makes Nahuatl like super amazing and super interesting. So if you all have any questions, Shinech Tlanilikan, ask me. Amo? Y'all don't have questions? No? Ashkana? No? Was everything clear?
Ashkana. It was clear. It's just I had to get my mind
It's
right
a lot,
to switch
it's a lot
things.
of vocabulary, right?
Gemma.
To me, it's one of my most favorite topics, and you'll notice when you learn a lot of vocabulary, especially long words, they're generally constructed by smaller words. And now that you know how they're constructed, you could probably figure it out. Yeah. All those place names in Nahuatl that you see in all over Mexico, a lot of them are combinations of multiple nouns in one word. So like Chapultepec, Chapultepec. Well, in Spanish they say Chapultepec, but it's Chapultepec. It's literally grasshopper, Chapolin, or Chapulin, Chapolin, and Tepec from the word Tepet. Tepet is hill, and then we haven't talked about at the end of a noun because it's a classical construction. But Chapultepec it means like at the place of at the hill of the grasshopper, or like Xochimilco would be Xochitl, flower. Mili, field or garden. It can mean field or garden. Xochimili, and then ko. So at the flower field, Xochimilco. Many places like that. So you'll notice that a lot of place names in Nahuatl that are combinations of nouns. So you could kind of figure them out that way. So this will help you in that way. And you can create your own words like Spider-Man and whatever you want. It's your creativity, whatever two nouns you want to create. I halfway made the homework, so it's not really done. But hopefully I'll get it done this weekend if I'm not lazy. Tlanashkana ni tlatziwi if I'm not lazy.
Kiniki mo ilia Spider-Man ika Nahuatl.
Spider in Nahuatl is tocatl, T-O-C-A-T-L, tocatl. And the man part, well, it would be tlacatl. So it would be toca, tlacatl, toca, tlacatl. If you wanted to say man. If you want to say woman, toca sihuatl. If you want to say person, I guess it would be like toca masewali. That would be like spider person. Any other questions? Get creative. Come up with your creative nouns that you want to combine. And if you have some creative ones, send them to me on YouTube and put them in the comments. Or I guess I was gonna say put them on here, but I don't think y'all have any right now. All right, tlasokamati miak, xikochikan kuali, sleep well. Timoitase chikuayiyok. We'll see each other in a week. Piali.
Timoitase tlasokamati temachtiketl.
Timoitase.